So, hi, Oscar. Thank you so much for making time to talk about your piece. Um, could you tell us a little bit about your piece for Talia?
Sure. It's called La Arqueología del Neón, which translates in English as the archaeology of neon. The title comes from actually I was reading an essay online in Spanish about. I read the article and I was really interested in it, and then this title popped in my head, and I thought, oh well, it's a quote from the article, and it wasn't a quote from the article, and that actually this this phrase was nowhere in the article. So, but I liked it, so I thought, well, it's kind of perfect for the piece. And the piece is sort of, I think, for a general thing, it's sort of about the idea of distortion and the idea of uncovering. And these two sort of things are in play for me in many kind of um, moments in the piece and different things in the piece. For example, in terms of distortion, the strings have a preparation on them that really distorts the sound. And in fact, it kind of sounds like there's actual distortion on them, although it's actually all done acoustically. And even some other kind of electronic effects, but it's actually just an acoustic preparation. There's a little bit on bass clarinet as well, and there's some very standard preparations on piano. But also the idea there's these uncovering things. There's times in the piece where the piece kind of stops and it kind of goes to, at least for me, my thinking was it goes to a sort of different, these kind of holes in the piece where there's a lot of forward momentum in the piece, and it stops, and there are these holes where we get these drone tones that are present in various different parts of the piece. We get these little melodic things that come in, and the whole piece sort of stops, and then it carries on going. And this happens a few times, and so this is the kind of I've had this obsession for a long time about music that can be heard through other music. You know, like the idea, like if you listen to something, even I mean, this happens in standard repertoire. You know, if you hear like if there's a big loud tutti section, and then there's a very quiet section, you have that sort of oral after image of the loudness in the next section. And it's something that just really always appeals to me, and I always find it sort of, I don't know, it's a little bit of an obsession for me. So I kind of like this idea of trying to hear music through other music, like these sort of, yeah, like I say, like an oral after image. So that's sort of, but you know, the way that the neon in the night, when you see the neon, you get this glow around it, and then even as you, if you look at it and you move away and you just look at the darkness, you'll get that after image as well. So that's sort of, it's sort of all in there for me.
So, it's kind of a technical thing, this oral after image for you.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of what. Yeah, it's sort of what. Yeah, I mean, it becomes a technical thing, but it's sort of what happens when you know if you have a loud thing and then something quiet, then you sort of get that anyway. But I
Right.
mean, but maybe also it goes the other way around, and that you know these sort of holes in the piece then affect what happens afterwards as well. So, you know, and just how, yeah, I guess it's sort of how different objects can pull against each other, like musical objects as well. But yeah, so that's something that you know, it's something I've been interested in a lot of pieces. But this one, it's like it's really it's definitely a feature of this piece, I think.
That's cool. You can definitely hear it from hearing the piece in rehearsal, the differences between the sections and the fact that these sort of drone sections recur after a certain amount of time. Um, how do you think about sort of the moment to moment transition in the context of a larger form, a larger structure, with
Uh,
this oral after image thing in mind?
yeah, well, you know, a lot of it is thinking about these things as they play in time. So, sort of placing, for me, it's like placing these holes in the piece so they sort of punctuate time in a way that works. It sort of gives a slower pulse for me than the fast thing that's happening, because the piece is very fast. I mean, the piece is generally very, very fast, and then these things give like almost like a slower punctuation of time, like a another temporal level. And so the transitions are really, I mean, they're deliberately like cut. They're deliberately not transitional. I mean, a little bit. Sometimes there's a little blur. A little sort of thing that maybe the drones start a little bit early, so you get a feeling that they're not just immediately like not like an on off. They're sort of covered. But generally, yeah, I think that those things are, at least for me, are meant to give like like a different temporal layer. And then, I mean, I do like. I've always been attracted to the idea of. I mean, I don't really write too many transitions in my music. It's not something that occasionally, but it's not something that it's not something I gravitate towards. I like. I like the idea of material. It sort of comes from the idea of like the material in it has its own like it can make itself, it can grow. Like it has this kind of internal way of growing, but it has this internal way of dying as well. That so that at a certain point I feel it's like if it exhausts itself, then cut to the next thing rather than so for me I think about these things as like how far can what's their lifespan, and when their lifespan's over I don't want to transition because they're already done, so I go no, next thing. So that's really, I mean, that's the way I think about most material, unless there is material that can, there is sometimes I think about material that can sort of maybe there's definitely things that can dovetail, or that can, crossfade, but mostly it's the idea that this thing has its lifespan and then it's done.
So you don't really deal very much with development of material in your work?
I don't know. Development is it's a really it's a loaded term.
Yeah.
That's why you said it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I know.
They teach it to us.
I caught you. No. I know. I don't. Development. I don't know if I can have it. Can I have it both ways? Can I say yes and no?
Sure.
I don't know.
If you explain.
No, I'm not going to explain. I'm just going to say yes and no.
That's fine.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think. Yeah, maybe that development in time. Maybe like I think that time develops things. Like I think that like if something occurs at the beginning of a piece and then it occurs a certain way through the piece in a different way, even if it's identical, time has done something to that because of the context of the other music. So I think of things as like contextually, like developed through context, rather than like I don't think of things as in like here's my theme and I will now show you my workings out of the theme. I'm not really interested in that. I mean, I think that I just don't think that way at all. I definitely don't think of material in a kind of like I don't know, Brahmsian, Schoenbergian sense. That's just you know, that ain't my bag. It's just not the way I think about it.
Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, so I suppose the idea that oh god, I'm gonna get in trouble for this, but I suppose it's the idea that it isn't what it is; it's what you do with it, right?
Mm.
Maybe if I'm boiling it down, I'm really this huge, broad generalization. But the idea that it's yes, you have a statement, and yes, it's a but it's really what you do with that idea. So the idea can be really kind of, fairly mundane or really really basic, but it's what you do with it that is the impetus, the impulse for, and that's not really what I think about. Like, no, it's the thing. You know, like I want to present something that's. I don't really want it to go. I mean, it can go further, but I already want ideas to be pretty much fully formed. Like I don't want to show my workings out of anything, really, particularly. That's not really. I like to sort of go. Here's an idea. Here's another idea. You know, and have them kind of maybe fight it out a bit. You know, that can happen. So maybe that's a kind of development, but it's not. But that's also of course that's happening through time because it's music. So I that's the way I think about things rather than like a discursive thing, I suppose. And maybe I think about things more as a kind of dramatic arc or something than a narrative arc. Although I don't know how I'm going to defend that. I just said it. No, I have no idea.
That's okay.
I went off there. No, I don't know. But I don't. Yeah, but I just don't think. For me, it's about. I want to present an idea that's fully formed rather than show a development in that kind of traditional sort of sense of like, you know, a development section or like a, you know, something like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think going back to the title and the concept behind the piece, archaeology and artifacts, you know, I could see that making a lot of sense for people who are new to your work, or maybe people who are more familiar with your past work. Can you tell me a little bit more about this connection with neon? Is there more past the initial like inspiration behind the article? Is neon the object of neon? It's being like an integral part of the piece in any way?
Well, you know, I mean, one thing is that, you know, I mean, this brightness. I mean, it's like um, this artificial kind of brightness. You know, I mean, neon is, you know, I mean, in the day, yeah, fine, it's okay, but like at night, like it's like this. It's just an impressively bright thing when it's at nighttime. So that was one thing, like and these brash, bold colors of neon. You know, they're like neon has its own kind of colors. The weird thing is I've got these pieces now. This one and another, this opera that I'm writing that are all about sort of about colors in different ways. And I'm actually colorblind, so it's kind of a weird. I don't know why. Anyway, but yeah, so this really brash color is something that is interesting to me, and also the fact that neon, at least old neon, is like it has that buzz, right? You know, I mean that neon buzz, that really the distortion. You know, it actually you hear neon. You know, I mean, and that was really the other thing for me is that this thing that kind of is like this. It kind of creates this cute aura around it, and you can hear it. You know, it's like this distortion. So that was yeah, this brashness and this buzz was really something that I don't know, when I got that phrase and I thought, you know, it says something to me about this piece that I'm working on. You know, it happens to be quite a lot that I work on a piece and, you know, I don't know if this, I'm sure it happens to other people, but like, you know, you're once you get into your piece, you're sort of open, your mind is like really open to sort of possibilities and ideas, and suddenly, you know, you read something and you're like, that's what the piece is, you know, and you kind of, and so that's always happens to me. I get like a little bit along with a piece and then suddenly I read something, or, you know, or I see something and suddenly it's like, that encapsulates, sort of helps me encapsulate the piece. I mean, I guess I always think of everything on a kind of conceptual level. I mean, it's something that I do. So I once I feel that I have, I mean, even though the concepts are pretty, you know, pretty abstract, like I do think on things on that kind of conceptual level. So that's why, you know, this thing of like, if I can think about like the idea of neon and the buzz and stuff and the uncovering of things, then it really like, that gives me a way to kind of, I don't know, get things moving in the right direction, I suppose, with the writing process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. Can you tell us a little bit about, speaking of buzz, can you tell us a little bit about what you've done to the instruments? How do you prepare the instruments?
Yeah, so, well, there's a really basic basic preparation on the bass clarinet, which is actually just tinfoil now. It was paper, but actually tinfoil just gives a buzz to the sound. It sounds it just gives a buzz and a distortion. The piano has a preparation on the one of the lower keys that just mutes it, just makes it really kind of, you get some of the bass note, but it's not very, it doesn't ring very much. And then there are my favorite preparation for piano, which is just dimes in the middle range of the piano, just threaded between the strings, and they just sound like little gongs, and it's like I use it. I mean, I use that pretty much, not in it. No bass every piece. I mean,
That's okay.
I love them. I just love them. They're such beautiful little sounds. They just, I don't know. They really speak to me. Just there's something very, very kind of, I don't know, sort of warm about them. And then the big preparation is the on the strings. The strings are just actually prepared with blue tack. I was talking to a friend of mine, who's a colleague of mine. We've worked together on many pieces. My friend Pete from Ensemble Clang, who was telling me about a guitar preparation that used blue tack, like a classical guitar preparation that used blue tack, and I sort of thought, well, see what happens on strings. This probably might do something kind of cool. I think this one piece that he's talking about, they just did it on one string. I thought, well, I'm going to try it on all the strings. Each one of the strings and all the strings for the ensemble, and let's see what happens. So I tried it. I have a violin here. I used to be a violinist, so try it out, and it sounded pretty good. And then I actually tried it out. This weird time that we're in, you can try things out on Zoom. So I got to try it out with the string players and string members of Talea. So and I was sort of we discovered sort of how that works. I mean, there's some pretty obvious things, like you have to put, the lower the string, the more the blue tack you have to put on. That seems obvious. Where you place it does make an effect, of course. And you have to, you can get various different things, but I was going for a really kind of distorted sound, so we had to, it was a bit of trial and error, but it's, for me, actually, once I discovered this, that was the other thing, so aside from this title thing that gave me that, like, discovering this preparation gave me, the piece just started going after that point. It was okay, the writing process was okay, but once I got this, I was off at the races, so yeah.
Yeah. Last question. So, maybe this is a loaded question, I'm not sure. What about preparation, basically?
Yep.
I think a lot of people that I know, and I know in my education, have been sort of framed to see things like preparation and extended techniques as extended, as not part of what the instruments were built to do, or what the tradition is teaching us to do, and stuff like that. So I'm just wondering what role preparations and things like that, do you see them as additions or changes to the instrument, an extension of something? How do you see this working in the sort of larger trajectory of Western classical contemporary music?
Well, that's a really good question. I think I would take the view that, I mean, people have been doing this for a long time now. So I mean, it's sort of, I think it's sort of pretty natural. I mean, especially if you working with an ensemble like Talea, like no one's fazed by it. It's totally, I mean, I would say that if you were going to, I don't know about doing string preparations with a, Vienna Philharmonic might not be too into it. I mean, not that they not that they're calling me asking me for a piece, but I mean, that's the places. There's a time and a place. I mean, I don't know, like in contemporary music, I don't think it's that. I don't think it's particularly weird, but I guess the main thing that I would say is that um, in non-classical music, this idea of preparation and just like doing things to your instrument is just completely standard and normal and what you do. It's not even like, it's not even like an extended technique. I mean, people have been playing around with guitars for ever since it was, well, electric guitars ever since it was amplification, just doing things to their guitar. Like, what can I do here? How can I make this sound? I mean, the without thinking of them as preparations, just like, how do I get this sound? How do I do this? How do So I kind of and maybe that's, well, definitely it's definitely true with guitars and sort of sometimes equipment as well. So that's sort of how I think about these things. So like, outside of I think that I would say that it would be a rare person now, a rare composer or contemporary performer that wasn't influenced some way by popular music, one way or another. And so, if we say that, that has that helps us expand the classical tradition as it always has done. I mean, there's always been it's not like these things are fenced off, but so just thinking about these things in those terms, then it's not strange. I mean, I think, of course, this doesn't really happen in like Beethoven, but I mean, who cares? I mean, I don't.
I lied before. One last question.
Yeah.
What kind of popular music has influenced you slash do you like?
I like loads of types of popular music. I mean, one of my, I mean, I grew up listening to quite a lot of metal and stuff. I mean, I really, that was kind of, especially when I was a teenager, I really, but also there was lots of other things. And I mean, I do like a lot of metal, but I really, one of my things is kind of 70s funk and soul, and late in the 70s as well. I mean, not just 70s, but um, yeah, jazz. I don't know. Some jazz. Things like I don't know. Some things like The Cure. I don't know. There's a lot of things actually. I like some electronic stuff. I don't know. There's a lot. Um, and it. I'm interested in. I'm just interested in lots of different types of music, I guess, and so. But I do think that like the influence of popular music on contemporary music in many different ways. It's not just like it there are very obvious ways that can be sort of that can happen, like and I've done it, like using drum kits and using electric guitars and stuff. But also I think there are just many ways that like it it it, it, it informs what we do. And so I'm sort of, yeah, there's lots I think it just comes in lots of forms in my music. But yeah, I like a lot of different things actually. I mean, there are definitely things. I mean, maybe I should say what I don't like. I mean,
Sure.
I mean, I've got to say, I'm not really very into like stuff like country and folk. That's not really my stuff. But I can definitely get into. I mean, there's not. I mean, there is some. There's great examples of every genre. I would never say that that there's any genre that's bad particularly, but just stuff I gravitate towards more. But like and like the stuff I really hate is like the pop country stuff that you get now, like the kind of stadium sort of country, like that I hate that stuff. But there's I mean there's some really great I don't know. I put that off in a different sort. That's not country. That's sort of some just stuff that's just been for sort of, there's like you travel across the country and you turn on the radio station, you're like, what, I just can't do this. But there's you know, I mean, I don't know. I like a lot of different stuff. Like, that's a really long answer for a really simple question. Sorry.
It's a complex question. You know, it's hard. It's being put on the spot. Like, what do you like? I don't know, all the things, but not actually.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of sort of classic stuff as well. Like, you know, I really like Bowie and like, um, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of classic stuff I like. You know, I mean, you know, and actually, I'm really interested in the sort of like right now. I'm kind of interested in the kind of. I gave my students a studio class the other day where we talked about cover versions, and I just decided to talk about popular music. We talked about cover versions and stuff like, you know, the intersection of kind of like Southern soul and Southern rock is a really interesting kind of
Mm.
weird little corner of popular music. And you know, there's a great Wilson Pickett and Dwayne Allman version of Hey Jude, which is like my favorite version of Hey Jude. And I will argue forever that I think it's better than the original version. And you know, but it's a very controversial point, of course. But I love it. I think it's amazing. And like, you know, then you know, stuff like that. I get really interested in things like that. And like, I might post this up actually later on. I made a little YouTube links of like the history of the song "Midnight Train to Georgia,"
Oh, nice. Yeah.
which is has a great history, that song. And the Gladys Knight version is like one of my favorite things ever. I mean, her vocal is just every time. I mean, it almost brings me to tears. It's so good. I mean, it's just
Yeah.
unbelievable. She's so good. And actually, the whole side, that album that it's on, the whole side of that, the first side of that album, is unbelievable. I like it so much. I had an old version that I bought when I was in grad school, and I played it a few weeks ago. I just dug it up, and it didn't sound very good, so I had to buy another version. But it only cost me like, it's like $5, but so it's not like a huge expense. I'm not like, you know, but I had to order one off Discogs because it was like all scratchy, so I had to get a better version of it. So
And vinyl, right?
um, yeah, everyone's into vinyl now, and I used to be, and then I've got back into it, and it's like a drug. Honestly, I'm like on Discogs, like I have to actually stop myself from going, because I listen to something, I go, this, I bet this will sound really sweet on vinyl, and it does sound really sweet on vinyl, and that's
Yeah.
the problem. You
That's the
know?
thing. It's the
Yeah.
object and the sound. You know.
It's totally it's honestly, it is the object and the sound. It's amazing. You go, well, I'll take the album out and I'll put it on the turntable and then I'll listen to it, and you do listen to it. Whereas you stream something and you go, yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Click.
Click.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really. Having said that, um, we're really looking forward to hearing your whole piece. And thanks again for answering our questions and writing this piece for us and taking the time to talk
Absolutely.
with us. You know.
It's been fantastic. Talia are amazing. I can't say I don't have enough superlatives. They're just amazing, and it's been such a great process. So, and I'm really looking forward to this coming out.
Cool. Great. Well, thank you.